This is a Fox News alert. There's been a summertime tragedy. At least 7 people reportedly were swept to their deaths after flash flooding wiped out a swimming hole in central Arizona. We're told at least 2 of those who were killed were children. 3 people at this hour are still missing as search and rescue efforts continue to be underway. This all happened inside the Tonto National Forest near Payson, Arizona, at the Cold Spring swimming hole. There apparently was a thunderstorm that hit 8 miles upstream while the people were swimming. Officials said those folks had no warning that the water suddenly started rushing down through the canyon and the rocks and just overwhelmed them. We're now waiting for more information from the Sheriff's Department, and we'll bring you the very latest as soon as we get it. And hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn, and this is America's News Headquarters.
And I'm Marthel Neville. Topping the news this hour, Senator John McCain undergoes surgery, forcing Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to delay a vote on the revised GOP health care bill. The legislation already hanging by a thread with no votes to spare.
And you know, the revelations keep coming about that meeting with Donald Trump Jr. at Trump Tower last year and some of those Russians. As now we learn there were at least 8 people in the room. This as President Trump again is criticizing the media coverage of the whole Russia investigation.
Plus, the battle for Mosul is in the books after Iraqi forces claim victory over ISIS. What does it mean for the big picture in the fight against the Islamic State? Ambassador Dennis Ross will join us. America's News Headquarters starts right now. And we begin with the uncertain fate of the GOP's revised health care bill. Several lawmakers voicing reservations about the plan, but Republicans cannot afford to lose any more support because 2 senators already oppose it. Now, a new complication in the mix. A key vote to advancing the bill put on hold as Senator John McCain recovers from eye surgery. Garrett Tenney is live in Washington with the very latest. Hi, Garrett.
Well, Arthel, this delay means that the Senate won't be holding a vote on the revised health care bill for at least another week while Senator McCain is recovering. In the meantime, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell also has now some additional time to win over his fellow Republicans. We know he's already made a number of changes to try and sweeten the deal for several undecided lawmakers. This morning, Senator Susan Collins, who plans to vote against the bill, said there are still 8 to 10 Republicans with deep concerns about the revised plan, and at this point, she thinks it could go either way.
I don't know. I think it would be extremely close. There are many of us who have concerns about the bill, particularly the cuts in the Medicaid program. But there are other problems with the bill as well. It could lead to insurance plans that really are barely insurance at all.
This afternoon, the Congressional Budget Office announced that with the delay, it will now also be holding off on releasing its analysis of the revised health care bill. That will also give Senate leadership more time to tweak the bill and get a better score, which may be helpful because this morning the administration seemed like it was not expecting that report to come back very positive, with HHS Secretary Tom Price calling it flawed.
CBO doesn't even capture those individuals who say to the federal government, I don't want the plan that you think I need. I want the plan that I know I need for myself and for my family. So those numbers are so flawed in terms of what actually happens in the real world when people act for themselves.
While this delay certainly could be helpful to Senate leadership in getting the health care bill passed, it also has the potential to hurt those efforts as critics now have more time to pile on those undecided lawmakers trying to convince a single one to vote no, which could turn the whole thing down. Arthel?
Garrett Tenney. Thanks so much, Garrett.
And meanwhile, doctors say that Senator McCain is doing well at this hour, resting comfortably at his home in Arizona after he underwent that successful surgery to remove a blood clot from above his left eye. Will Carr has more on the senator's progress from our West Coast Bureau and his recuperation. Hi, Will.
Hey there, Eric. This was unexpected. Senator McCain went in for a routine annual physical and found out that he had a blood clot above his left eye. that led to surgery, which will keep him on the sidelines and is now delayed a vote on the health care bill. McCain, who has battled melanoma at least 4 times over the years, is in good spirits and resting comfortably at his home, according to his staff. In a statement, the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix says surgeons successfully removed the 5-centimeter blood clot during a minimally invasive craniotomy with an eyebrow incision. Senator McCain tweeting, "Thanks to Mayo Clinic for its excellent care. I appreciate your support and look forward to getting back to work." His daughter Megan, a Fox News contributor, tweeted, "Thank you to everyone for all of your well wishes to my father and family. I'm here in Arizona with him. He's doing very well. Fiery as ever." That could be good news for Senator Mitch McConnell, who needs McCain's vote. McConnell releasing a statement that says, in part, "There are a few people tougher than my friend John McCain, and I know he'll be back with us soon." McCain has not pledged yet that he will vote yes on the Senate health care bill, and in recent days expressed reservations about the revised bill. His partner from Arizona, Senator Jeff Flake, tweeting, "Senator John McCain is the most tenacious and resilient man I know. I look forward to seeing him back at work soon." McCain is now waiting for pathology results on the tumor before he decides on his next step. Eric.
All right, well, of course, we wish the very best for a speedy recovery for the senator. He's been through a lot worse in his life. We know he'll be back on his feet and back in Washington soon. Will, thank you.
Absolutely.
We do wish him well. Meanwhile, President Trump defending his son and denying any collusion with Russia as new information comes to light about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian lawyer at Trump Tower in June of 2016. Turns out there were 8 people in the room, not just the 4 the president's son originally mentioned. Kevin Corke is live from Piscataway, New Jersey, near the Trump National Golf Course, where the president is attending the U.S. Women's Open. Hi, Kevin.
You are right on the money there, 504. Now, I want you to think of this as sort of a love-hate relationship, only in this case, the divorce lawyer is on speed dial. We're talking about the president's love-hate relationship with the mainstream media. And it was in the news once again early Sunday morning after a presidential Twitter storm. The protagonist in this case, the folks at his base just love to hate. We're talking about the press. Let me take you to the first of many tweets that we could actually share with you, but for time's sake, we'll only share a few. This one, with all of its phony, unnamed sources and highly slanted and even fraudulent reporting. Fake news is distorting democracy in our country. Another tweet that I thought was really interesting, Hillary Clinton can illegally get the questions to the debate and delete 33,000 emails, but my son Don is being scorned by the fake news media? Now, those tweets coming in the wake of a barrage of stories criticizing his son, Don Jr., for taking that now infamous meeting with a Russian lawyer and others in search of opposition research on Hillary Clinton during the campaign of 2016, a controversy that, at least so far, has not reached the president himself.
Nothing has changed since when James Comey told the president he was not under investigation on 3 different occasions, and we have no notification of any investigation going on of the president of the United States.
In response to the probe, the White House has added Ty Cobb, special counsel, former federal prosecutor, and part of the investigative practice area of a major law firm in Washington, D.C., Harvard grad, also Georgetown Law. But lawmakers like Virginia Senator Mark Warner aren't so sure this controversy won't go all the way to the top of the White House.
I think it's really important that we get documents from these individuals first so we can ask them the right questions. Clearly, if we don't have all the information, what we'll see and what I'm afraid of is these individuals don't seem to disclose everything or don't tell the whole truth until they have evidence put in front of them.
Now, keep this in mind. This is a very serious circumstance because you're going to hear words like obstruction, even words like perjury thrown around. And that's why the White House is really circling the wagons here and getting someone with a great deal of experience and bringing on Ty Cobb. Now, as for the rest of the day, the president relaxing, of course, watching the final round of the U.S. Women's Open Golf Championship over at Trump National in nearby Bedminster before heading back to the White House tonight. Looking forward to Made in America Week. The White House announcing that today as the president and the administration focusing its energy and its praise on American products, companies, and, of course, the people that make the Made in America brand the global leader. All right, back to you for now.
I will take it back here, Mr. Kevin Corke. Thank you very much. Eric?
And our thought, meanwhile, next in the Russian investigation, we'll explain what Russian bots are. This as both critics and allies of the president are speaking out about the new revelations from Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian lawyer and a Russian-American lobbyist.
Donald Trump Jr. himself said things should have been done differently. Having said that, again, none of that is violation of the law. That's more process.
Time now for a quick check of the headlines. More than 2,000 people have forced to evacuate in Santa Barbara County, California, west of L.A. as a week-old wildfire continues to burn. It's less than 50% contained at last report. That's thanks to dry heat. The Associated Press reporting New Jersey Governor Chris Christie sought hundreds of millions of dollars to fund the renovation of the State House months before the project was ever approved. Jersey lawmakers accuse Christie of, quote, rigging the project. The governor says it has all been handled legally and appropriately. And after months of violent, often deadly protest over chronic shortages of basic goods, thousands of people lining up across Venezuela for a symbolic protest vote against the socialist president and his plan to rewrite the country's constitution.
Here's the reality. The meeting in and of itself, of course, as I've said before, is not a violation of the law, but I think it's important to understand that as counsel to the president was not aware of the meeting and did not participate in it.
Well, that, of course, is President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, defending Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with the Russian lawyer, Natalia Veselitskaya, and that Russian-American lobbyist, Rinat Akhmetshin. You know, the ranking Democrat, though, on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff, well, he disagrees with Sekulow. He says the meeting was, in his view, quote, clear evidence of the president's son's intent to collude with the Russians.
We have to rely on Don Jr.'s representation of what happened in that meeting, and we've already seen many times we can't rely on that because, of course, he first said no such meeting ever happened, and then he said the meeting was about adoptions, and then he admitted the meeting was about getting information on Hillary Clinton, and that he wasn't forthcoming about who was in the meeting. So we can't accept anything Don Jr. says.
So is that true? No, we'll find out more. Katie Glick joins us, senior political correspondent for the McClatchy newspaper chain and co-host of McClatchy's Beyond the Bubble podcast. Katie, welcome.
Thank you.
I mean, the most thorough information potentially could come if and when Donald Jr. testifies before the Intelligence Committee. He has offered to cooperate. Do you think he will do that, and what would we expect?
Well, great to be with you. And certainly we are hearing bipartisan calls and growing bipartisan calls to have him testify before a number of committees, whether it's intelligence, whether it's judiciary. And, you know, certainly Donald Trump Jr. has said that he would like to cooperate, be forthcoming in any way possible. And, of course, he did take the initiative to release on his own those emails that that set off the inquiry and sort of the interest in more detail about this meeting. But at the same time, lots of people do note that the story has evolved, certainly, over, certainly the course of the last week in terms of the reason for this meeting, who was at this meeting.
Yeah, they keep on adding people. I mean, then we have an interpreter now and an eighth person. They don't have an identity of this eighth person, apparently, yet.
Exactly, and we are hearing growing calls on Capitol Hill for everybody who is involved in that meeting, who knows about that meeting, to ultimately testify. And, you know, you're hearing Republicans, you're hearing Democrats say it's really important to have Don Jr. And others. And, of course, Manafort was in that meeting, the former campaign chair of the president's campaign, and Jared Kushner was in that meeting, as well as other names that are coming forward.
You know, so and there's apparently the AP is reporting or has reported that Natalia had some type of plastic folder, supposedly, with information that it was claimed showed illicit financing going from the Russians to the DNC. We have no evidence of that. Do we know anything about that folder, if indeed that folder exists, or whether that's just a spurious claim?
Well, I don't know if I can speak to maybe the specifics of details with regard to that folder, but certainly lots and lots of interest in Natalia, who you know, of course, has been described as a Kremlin-linked lawyer, and you know, of course, she's pushed back on that characterization. But you know, this was a person that was described to Don Jr. as someone who might be able to offer information that was helpful to the campaign, that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton. And so, you know, the email suggests that he went into that meeting with that understanding, even if he later says that was not the ultimate subject of the discussion.
And some people have even questioned her motivations. I mean, there's alleged links to Fusion GPS, a Democratic consulting group. They deny it. I mean, that's out there. You know, the suggestion that this potentially was a setup. Any evidence of that?
Well, certainly lots of interest, again, in who she is and sort of the lead up to this meeting and who, of course, ended up being in the meeting. And, other questions more broadly about whether there were other meetings. And of course, the president's lawyer on shows earlier today suggested that he wasn't aware of other meetings that Donald Trump Jr. was present at. But of course, he is President Trump's lawyer, as he also made clear. So lots of interest about what specifically happened at that meeting with this lawyer and who else was there.
Yeah, and there are also other questions. In McClatchy, you have been doing some breaking news work in this, dealing with Russian bots. Mm-hmm. The Russian bot is basically this computer-generated stuff, those quote fake news stories that were actually were fake news stories going out there. And investigators apparently, according to your company's reportings, they want to investigate to see if there was any connection between the Trump campaign and the Russians on disseminating some of that on the computer data. Brad Parscale, he was the digital director for the Trump campaign. He's been called to testify. He has denied, there is a picture of him, he ran the digital operation. He has denied any type of collusion. He said he didn't know anything about any coordination with Russia. He basically dealt with, Google and Facebook and the internet. But here's what McClatchy reports, quote, Russia's operation used computer commands known as bots to collect and dramatically heighten the reach of negative or fabricated news about Clinton, including a story in the final days of the campaign accusing her of running a pedophile ring at a Washington pizzeria. We know about that. Mm-hmm. Investigators doubt Russian operatives controlling the so-called robotic cyber commands that fetched and distributed fake news stories could have independently known who had to specifically target and to which high-impact states and districts in those states. So do we have any indication of where that part of the investigation is going? Because that's a whole other area, not dealing with this meeting, but of, the cyber internet use of these stories that apparently targeted the voters that someone wanted to reach.
Right, and you make a good point that this is actual fake news. We hear that term tossed around a lot, but this is referring to actual fake and damaging stories, in this instance, about Hillary Clinton. So the question that some investigators from the House and the Senate and tied to the Justice Department have is whether some of the people who were controlling these bots, these Twitter bots that were disseminating these fake stories, whether they got any guidance from people in and around the Trump campaign, perhaps tied to the digital operation, in terms of where to target those damaging stories and whether it would be most effective to have such stories land in swing states and in other places where there was perhaps soft Clinton support. So that is the question on the minds of some folks who are looking at this issue.
Well, this apparently is part of the investigation. You'd think there'd be internet or computer fingerprints, perhaps, that they could trace back, if indeed there was any, which they deny. All part of the continuing investigation. Katie Glick of McClatchy newspaper chain. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Of course. Arthur.
This is a Fox News alert, a summertime tragedy. At least 7 people reportedly swept to their deaths after flash flooding wipes out a swimming hole in central Arizona. At least 2 of those killed were children. 3 people are still missing. Search and rescue efforts are underway. Now, this happened inside the Tonto National Forest near Payson, Arizona, at the Cold Spring swimming hole after a thunderstorm hit 8 miles upstream as people were swimming. Officials say they had no warning. Joining me now by phone is Detective Sergeant David Hornung, Public Information Officer at the Gila County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant, thank you very much for joining us here. And if you could fill us in on the very latest in the search and rescue efforts.
Presently, we are on scene trying to search the area below where the incident happened. The search area is approximately 4 to 5 miles long along the Verde River.
And of course, the location is about 70 to 75 miles from Phoenix. Do you have all the resources that you need? Who's helping out?
Well, we have the local Tonto Rim Search and Rescue have about 40 individuals out here. They've been out here since about 6 o'clock this morning, and they've been methodically searching the shoreline. And we also have a Department of Public Safety helicopter flying the river to assist the people on the ground.
And if you would, take us back to how all of this started. What do you know about that, Sergeant?
Well, This is in central Arizona. This is the monsoon season, and thunderstorms and heavy rains can develop very quickly. Yesterday, we had a large cell that developed north of Payson, and to compound things, it hit a area of a wildfire that we had about a month ago, and the heavy rains flooded the creeks, and this large family unit was down by the river and had practically no warning that this flash flood was coming down the river, and 14 people were swept away from where they were.
That's really so sad, sir.
Yeah.
How are the family members who have suddenly lost loved ones? I mean, are they even able to hold up in the face of such a tragedy? Have you had a chance to speak with them?
Yes, the family members have been here all day, and when we arrived at 6 o'clock this morning, they had already been down walking along the river looking for their loved ones.
Well, Sergeant David Horning, thank you so much for joining us here, sir. We wish you and the rest of your crews the best in terms of the search and rescue efforts. And, of course, our thoughts are with those families who are now suddenly without their relatives. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
That is so sad, especially on a summer day. Well, drones, if you've noticed, have been, in some places, taking over the skies, doing everything from crop dusting to surveillance. Up next, how the unmanned aircraft are trying to change our lives, and that is sparking some new concerns. We will take a look. And the Republican health care bill, while facing that new setback, the key vote delayed following John McCain's surgery. But some are wondering, can Majority Leader Mitch McConnell keep the plan on track and win over skeptics in the GOP over the next week?
So we do need to fix the significant flaws in the current law. But the way to do that is through the normal process of committee hearings and expert witnesses and writing a bill with bipartisan support. President Obama, in my view, made a serious mistake when he pushed through the Affordable Care Act without a single Republican vote. I don't want us to make the same mistake in reverse and push through this bill without a single Democratic vote.
And that was moderate Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine voicing some of her concerns about the revamped GOP health care bill. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is now delaying a key vote to advance the bill to the floor for debate while Senator John McCain recovers from eye surgery. Without Senator McCain, Republicans would find it hard to round up enough votes needed to move forward. As if this were not enough, a new poll finding most Americans prefer Obamacare to the Republican plan by a margin of more than 2-1. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Drew Ferguson of Georgia. Congressman, nice to have you here.
Good afternoon. Nice to be with you today.
Thank you very much. So we'll start here. As a member of the Budget as well as the Transportation and Infrastructure Committees, you, I understand, are assessing the repeal and replacement of Obamacare from the standpoint of spending. So with that in mind, Congressman, where do you stand on the current GOP Senate health care bill?
Well, the thing that I want to emphasize as much as we can is that we've got to recognize that the Affordable Care Act continues to fail. Right here in my home state of Georgia, we have 96 counties that only have one insurer, and we're looking at almost 40% increases in our rates for next year here in the state of Georgia. So we have got to get some relief. Every time that I come home, our small business owners and our families are telling us that the Affordable Care Act is hurting them, and they have got to have some relief. And so what we're looking for, we are looking for bills to come from the Senate that repeal the taxes in Obamacare and do things to shore up the safety net system in Medicaid. And I believe that the House bill did that, and that's what we support.
And, of course, you know, the Senate bill, sir, would trim $772 billion in federal Medicaid funding over a decade. What do you say to the millions of Americans who would lose health care coverage as a result of that, those deep cuts to federal Medicaid funding?
Well, Arthel, if I respectfully disagree with that position, I will tell you that what we're doing is slowing the growth of Medicaid, and that's something that we have to do. We are $20 trillion in debt as a nation, and we have a real serious issue with our mandatory spending curve, and continuing to grow Medicaid and expand it the way that the Obamacare legislation did, quietly is unsustainable, and it will create a situation where we won't be able to keep any of our promises to the most vulnerable in our community, and that's just not right, and I think we've got to correct that.
And what do you think, sir, about having more control there in your state in terms of what happens to Medicaid, how it's funded, and where it's provided, especially in rural areas of Georgia?
Well, we know that states know better how to take care of their own populations, much more so than the federal government. We know here in Georgia that if we can create competition, we know that we can do things in a very innovative way to address the health care needs of Georgians. The solutions are found more at the local and the state levels than they are in D.C. In any legislation that comes from the Senate, we want to make sure that states have the flexibility to address the needs of their citizens.
So in addition to that, when you're talking about cuts, additions, and compromises, what would you like to see tossed back to the House? And are you confident that the Senate will actually vote on something to hand over?
What I want to see coming from the Senate is something very close to what we had in the House, which repeals $1.2 trillion worth of taxes and goes through and does a significant reduction in Medicaid funding, which is something that's important to do not only from a budget standpoint, but quite candidly, it's a right step in restoring the dignity of work to so many people that are trapped in a cycle of poverty. And yes, I do believe the Senate will get us a product that the House can consider, and I'm excited about getting that bill to the president's desk. As he said, he is sitting there with a pen anxiously waiting to sign it. So yes, I do think that they will, and I think that the senators on the other side are going to work very, very hard. They're going to find that very sweet spot that's the first step in rebuilding our American healthcare system the same way the House did.
Now, if there is not a resolution at this point in terms of health care, is there a clear road for Congress to begin to tackle infrastructure, not to mention tax reform, without health care first being checked off?
Well, I'm optimistic that the Senate will get us a bill. They're going to work very, very hard. The senators, just like the House members, are working to represent their constituencies, and I think that I think that they will, in fact, get us a product to vote on. That will, of course, lead to the very, very important topic of tax reform. We've got to grow our American economy. We've got to get past this 1.9% GDP growth that we've seen for the last several years, and we have got to put Americans back to work. People want to go to work, and we're going to do things in tax reform that make this the most competitive place on the planet to do business. Right now, our current tax code does everything it can to transfer wealth from the United States to other places in the world. We need to create fairness for our business community so that we can see job and wage growth, and we can begin to balance some of the trade issues that we've seen throughout the world.
I can imagine some people at home clapping to what you just said just now, Congressman. Let me ask you this, though. You know, there's no vote in the Senate this week on a floor debate on health care. From the viewpoint of the GOP House, how is repealing and replacing Obamacare looking?
Well, first of all, as you know, Senator McCain had surgery this morning, and Leader McConnell decided to delay the health care vote. Right. Our prayers are with the senator as he recovers from surgery.
Yes.
I think what that does in the House is it's given us time to continue to work on some really important issues outside of health care. As you mentioned, we have tax reform. We're doing major work on infrastructure. We've got an amazing bill coming through transportation and infrastructure that looks at a new way of doing air traffic control in the nation. We've got real work to do in our on education, and really working to create an educational environment that prepares the workforce for the 21st century job market. And so there's a lot of work yet to be done, and the Senate's going to have to continue to work, and hopefully they can catch up to the good work that's been done in the House.
And is bipartisan support crucial to get all that work done, sir?
Well, you know, we've seen a lot of good bipartisan bills come out of the House already. One of them was the reauthorization of the Perkins CTE program, which bolstered technical college. You see a lot of really positive work being done in the area of veterans affairs and veterans health care. Very strong bipartisan efforts there. We would welcome Democrats coming over and recognizing that we've got to go in a different direction than a single-payer system on health care. And I believe that Democrats will come on board with tax reform, because I can tell you one thing that we don't have is we don't have a single person coming up to us, Republican or Democrat, begging us to save our current tax code. We all know that it's broken, and we all know that it's got to get reformed.
Congressman Drew Ferguson, very nice to talk to you, and good luck with everything. Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the chance to be with you.
Thank you. And when we come back, Eric, we're going to tell our viewers about a horrific crash as a car goes airborne and then slams into the roof of a home, if you can imagine that. What started all of this, we'll tell you.
Well, over in Iraq, they're celebrating a historic victory over ISIS. You know, they took back Mosul, the last and largest Iraqi stronghold for the terrorist group. Ahead, we'll look at what this means in the global fight against the radical Islamic terrorists. Ambassador Dennis Ross on deck, the fight and win against ISIS.
So a car crashing into a house is bad enough, but how about a car crashing through the roof of a house? Yeah, it happened in St. Louis. Luckily, no one was home at the time. We're told the person who lives there was at the gym at the time. So what we do know is that the driver was reportedly speeding when his car somehow went airborne. The driver was taken to the hospital. The firefighters say he was alert and talking with them. So stay tuned for more details on this bizarre story.
Wow, another reason to go to the gym.
That's what I was thinking.
Wow. Well, meanwhile, overseas, Iraqi forces are celebrating a major victory over ISIS after retaking Mosul, one of the terrorists' last and largest strongholds in Iraq. Meanwhile, U.S.-backed Syrian forces face a similar difficult and bloody battle in Raqqa, where we are told they have now gained control of more than half the old city there, in which, of course, was the de facto ISIS capital in Syria. So, what do these successes mean in the global fight against ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism in general? Ambassador Dennis Ross joins us. He is former special Middle East coordinator, Fox News foreign affairs analyst, and author of Doomed to Succeed, the U.S.-Israeli Relationship from Truman to Obama. Ambassador, good to see you. We just saw the video of Iraqi folks and forces celebrating, but I guess in some ways now comes the hard part. What challenges do the Iraqis and American advisors face in the wake of ISIS being routed in Mosul?
Well, the challenges are huge. Obviously, the challenge of getting them out of Mosul, which took about 9 months, displaced probably 800,000 people. That was an enormous challenge, but now what you face is the need for massive reconstruction, because the level of devastation looks like images that you've seen from any city that's been completely bombed out. So there's a need for reconstruction. Reconstruction at a time when because oil revenues for Iraq have dropped, not because their production is lower, their production is high, but because oil prices are low, their budgets are stretched. There's going to be a need for help from the outside so that reconstruction can take place.
They talk about a price tag of like $1.3 billion. That's the UN estimate. I mean, who's going to pony that up, and will it happen?
Well, the State Department is hosting a major conference here to try to mobilize and solicit what will be contributions from countries around the world. Yeah, I have to say, I don't have high expectations that conference will necessarily produce not just pledges, but actions on those pledges that you'll be able to act on quickly. One of the things you need if you're going to, any of the people who've been displaced, they have to be able to return. Reconstruction is a must. Now, you don't have to get everything reconstructed all at once, but there has to be enough so that water is available, so electricity is available. And then there has to be security. People have to feel safe enough to return to their houses.
Do you think they will get to that point? Is that even possible after the destruction and devastation there?
Well, I'm worried about it. I do think there's going to have to be some kind of American presence along with Iraqi military forces. One of the big concerns I have is that the Shia militias, even though they didn't play a major role in the liberation of ISIS, they were active all around the suburbs. And every time we've seen the popular mobilization units, these are the Shia militias in particular, every time we've seen them active in an area that was formerly Sunni, we've seen them act in a way that basically creates deep suspicion and insecurity on the part of the Sunnis. We need Sunnis to return home. We need Sunnis to feel that there'll be governance there, that there'll be security there, that there'll be reconstruction there, that they'll be included there. If that doesn't happen, the very conditions that produced ISIS in the first place are going to be recreated. So, Eric, the first question you asked me was really about the nature of this challenge. In many ways, the challenge, as hard as it was to liberate Mosul, the harder part of the challenge comes now. Because the harder part of the challenge now begins to deal with what are the political realities in Iraq going to be? Are we going to see a kind of governance that allows for real coexistence between Shia and Sunni and Kurds? Or are we going to see the kind of sectarian politics that have roiled Iraq and have made it difficult to produce the kind of governance that would have precluded the emergence of ISIS in the first place?
And some of the history is not very encouraging on that score.
No, I mean, look, we've seen, if you go back, look at Fallujah today, look at Ramadi today. They were liberated over a year ago. Reconstruction there is really quite limited. The number of people who've actually returned, some have, but the numbers are still relatively small. You know, many people outside of Mosul are very difficult to live in camps that are run by the UN. The heat is unbearable, and yet people prefer the security of those camps to the uncertainty and the insecurity of going back to Mosul right now. They need to hear stories about people who have returned and things are working out. You know, it's like anything else. In a situation like this, you need some signs of success. The good news is that I think Sunnis are prepared to grant the government more of a license than they would have in the past because ISIS was so horrible. So it gives you some license, but you got to produce. And that's why I hope that the administration has not just a plan for reconstruction, security, governance, and the like, but also has an immediate set of actions it can take with the Iraqis to show that, in fact, they're carrying out the plan, it's being implemented, and, in fact, we will see a change.
And are you optimistic about that finally? Are you confident that that will indeed happen, or it will be the status quo?
I'm not optimistic. I'm worried. But one thing I would say that the Trump administration does not want to be in a position where the son of ISIS reemerges during the lifetime of this administration. So I think it has a very strong incentive to get things done. The conference that's being planned here for this coming week is a good first step if there's an action plan for what follows it. It can't just be you hold a conference and you hear a lot of good words. There has to be a plan for translating words into action, and the sooner we see that, the better for everybody.
Well, the president is a builder, so we'll see if indeed there can be an action plan to prevent, as you call it, the son of ISIS. Ambassador Dennis Ross, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Of course. Arthel?
And Eric will take a turn when we come back as brides suddenly turning into bridezillas across the country, but with good reason, though, as a bridal store chain suddenly goes out of business, leaving hundreds, if not thousands, of brides to be in a desperate situation. So a sudden bankruptcy is sending brides-to-be across the country into a panic. Alfred Angelo Bridal filing for bankruptcy on Friday. The chain's 61 stores nationwide closing down without notice, leaving hundreds, even thousands of future brides and bridesmaids with no dresses, even if they have already paid for them. Brian Yennis is live with more from our New York City bureau. More details, please, Brian.
Yeah, not a good situation. The sudden closure of all 61 Alfred Angelo bridal stores nationwide has left brides scrambling, panicking, crying, and many are now in full-on bridezilla mode this weekend. The dress retailer abruptly filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in West Palm Beach on Friday after failing to find a buyer for the company, leaving countless of brides-to-bes and bridesmaids without their dream dresses before their weddings. Customers found out about the closings only when they went to pick up their dresses at the stores. Many are now left dressless, without refunds, and heartbroken.
I drove all the way here from work. I'm hoping my dress is in there. The wedding's in 3 weeks, and half the bridesmaids don't have their dresses.
She was in tears, and I'm like, oh, calm down, it's only a dress. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, this was the dress. Like, we've spent a lot of time and money, and it's a big deal.
To make matters worse, the bridal dress company has not posted anything on social media or anywhere about their sudden closure. Corporate offices have left Alfred and Jello employees and customers scrambling on their own.
It was nationwide, and no one's answering any phone calls. Their entire corporate office is empty.
The chances of us getting our dresses and or getting our money back, who knows? Right now, I'm like, do I start looking for another dress? Am I out $1,000? What is this? I mean, what kind of business practice is this?
Now, the good news is bridal dress companies nationwide are stepping in, offering as much as 30%. That's David's Bridal. That's a 30% discount to crushed Alfred Angelo customers who are now in a pinch. And really, the advice is here, Ethel, if you have a local bridal store, check to see what they're offering to see if maybe you can get a deal if you're one of those customers affected by all this.
Good idea, because I cannot imagine the stress that these poor brides are under right now. Thanks, Brian Yennis.
Of course.
Oh, man.